suppose that's probably enough to scare you with. Here's the thing. So what do we do about it? As John Selk said, we've got to get beyond the outrage of it all. If you want more outrage, come tomorrow. I'll give you the long version of this. But how do we fix it? 8 years ago, see, as a 25-year professor, I was getting pretty mortified. Kids were coming to me, and the University of Wisconsin system, very well regarded. There's a reason they call the University of Wisconsin the Berkeley of the Midwest. And it has nothing to do with education, it has everything to do with politics. But I was getting kids, literally, I'll say this right now, my junior and senior English majors getting ready to graduate have about a 9th grade reading level. About a 9th grade reading level, that's about it. I have a friend who teaches at Florida State University, and he has 2 PhDs in math, and he actually works part-time for NASA. He was assigned, prior to the beginning of the school year, he was assigned by his college two sections of 7th grade math for the incoming college freshmen, because that's where they're starting with these kids. And of course the universities are taking them. Of course they are, because the universities are getting all that federal student loan money. So we're taking all of these kids who are, and guess what happens at the universities? And this is where I first came to this conclusion, because I was getting kids that were so unqualified, and when I'd ask, the argument was, well, social justice. Everybody deserves an education. We can't hold somebody back because they went to an inner city school or they were ADHD and didn't study very hard. We got to take them. And once we took them, conservatively I would say, 40% of my university kids don't belong in college. Either they will not do the work, their attitudes are so bad, or they intellectually cannot do it. They can't do it. And yet, we can't fail 40% of them. That's 40% of meal plans unsold, 40% of dorm rooms empty, right? And so what happens? I'm dead. This is a cliche. You've heard it before, but a college education is a $120,000 high school diploma 20 years ago. You're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars now for a college degree that makes you more or less as qualified as a high school graduate was in 1970. That's all it is. And yet, what do the liberals all want? Mandatory college paid for free, right? So, because all that was happening, and when I've got a 20-year-old who reads at a 7th grade reading level, I'll give you one more example. I'm a Shakespeare professor, among other things. I teach the great classics of Western culture. I teach the Bible. I teach C.S. Lewis. I teach Dante. Shakespeare is one of the things I teach very often. And when I started teaching Shakespeare 25 years ago, I taught 11 plays in a semester. Now I can get through 4. Only 4, because I have to teach them how to read it. We literally have to go through it line by line. I start by asking them, pick out the subject and the verb. I can't do it. Another piece of, sorry, I said one more. I'm going to give you one more anecdote still. Do you know in our freshman English courses at universities, every kid in college who goes to college has to take 2 freshman writing courses this freshman year. Comp 1 and Comp 2, whatever you want to call it. Do you know that we are not allowed to teach grammar in those courses anymore? They're writing classes, but we can't teach writing. Grammar has been branded by the academics as racist. It's bigoted. There's more than one way to speak. We're not going to prioritize the Queen's English over Ebonics. We are not going to honor complete sentences and thesis statements and correct punctuation over text speak anymore. Our kids are texting. Capitalization, punctuation. So to do it, to actually force kids to get better at writing, it's racist. So you know what they do in your freshman seminars? Instead of learning writing and reading in English, they're learning ideology. They get assigned essays. Write an essay on gay marriage. Write an essay on abortion. Write an essay on transgenderism. And they get graded not on the competency of the essay, because that's bigoted. They get graded on their sympathy to the cause. That's all it is. All right? And so having all this to deal with, I figured if I didn't get involved with kids on a younger age, at a lower level, well, I was never going to be able to get anything done. So we created, in conjunction with people in Appleton, in conjunction with the John Birch Society, we created Freedom Project, which is a complete online education from kindergarten through high school. So for moms and dads who understand the need to not put their kids in the public schools, but don't think they can do it, we've got real teachers who come into your classroom on the internet, right on a computer screen. And our teachers do all the grading, they do all the assigning of texts, and the classes are live. And so your kids, There's 25 kids in a classroom for the high school kids, which means your kid's in a virtual classroom with 25 kids from around the country and around the world. They have socialization, they have email, go back and forth with each other. The teachers are able to take kids and put them in little breakout rooms, put 3 kids in a room and 3 kids in a room, right? And then have them come back and report to the class. And the joy of this is that every kid sees the teacher's face. Every kid sees the teacher, but our teachers can't see any of your kids. We believe in your privacy. We will not mine your data, right? And so there's a list of all the kids there, and the kids can press a button, and a little red light goes off by his name. He's raised his hand. Oh, John, you hit your button. Look. And they talk to each other back and forth. It's a real school, in other words. And here's the genius of it. The minute the live class is over, it's immediately uploaded. So if you're the mom and dad, you have the ability to watch, if you want to, every single second of every single class your kid takes. If there's a problem, your kid seems like he's falling behind in history, or your kid comes home with an opinion that seems kind of goofy, go to the class, watch the class. We want parents to, we've lost this country and we've lost our kids because parents have backed off the education. John Selk said at the beginning of the hour, right? If we're not going to educate our kids, who? When did it dawn on, when did we decide collectively as a nation that total strangers with a worldview that is directly at odds with ours, we're going to have our kids 8 to 10 hours a day? When did we decide that? And see, the biggest problem with government schools is not the miseducation. Because there have been times in our history where the government schools have provided a basic, decent education. The real problem is the babysitting, the daycare. When I've talked to moms and dads across the country, it's almost never been about money. The problem has never been money. It's, I just don't want to have to stay home with my kids 3 or 4 hours a day. I know from 7:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, I can do what I want. And I just would simply say to you, if that's how we're thinking, then we don't deserve our kids to follow our worldview. Our worldview is, I had you kids, and I want you gone 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day with strangers, teaching you the important stuff of life. If we're taking that attitude, then we should not be the least bit surprised they're going. And so what are we at Freedom Project? Oh, well, somehow I got popped out of here. Hang on. That's what I want. All right, quickly.
We posted this ad.
All right, I got to go back, sorry. Okay, we went through this. Here we go. So what are we? 4 things. We are a school. I just kind of told you about it. And of course, we offer classical education. So you know that there's not going to be any Common Core. We offer grade level appropriate courses. Here's the thing. Unlike what Jason Zimba said, if we want all of our kids theoretically to be able to do calculus their senior year of high school, that means in 4th grade they better be doing this. In 8th grade they better be doing this. Right? If we want our kids to be able to read the classics of Western culture, we want kids to be able to open Shakespeare and read them by the time they're seniors in high school, then they better be reading these things at these levels. So what we do is we give, and this is something you want to try, we give free placement exams to any mom who wants to take them. If you come to Freedom Project, take a free English placement exam for your kid at whatever grade level, and a free math exam. We'll grade you the exam and send it back to you, no charge, no obligation. Here's what happens. 95% of the time, public school kids are 2 years behind where we are. And that makes sense, right? If they're cutting out calculus, if they're dumbing it down, they're easily 2 years behind where they're supposed to be. And so we are a school, classical education with Christian foundations, right? That's what we give. In fact, one of our mottos is we try to give kids the same kind of education theoretically the Founding Fathers would have gotten, with updated math and science, of course. At every grade level, elementary, middle, and high school, we expose our kids to economics. It's completely forgotten. Our college kids have $1.2 trillion of debt. They are never going to pay that back. And they're majoring in things that they can't possibly make a living at. So we teach economics at every level. We teach logic at the high school and middle school level. We also have curriculum. One of the things that happened with Common Core is Common Core drove out all the other textbooks. You can't buy for school anymore textbooks that are not Common Core. What happened is all the textbook publishers realized how much money they were going to make selling all the schools the new stuff. So they pulled from the shelves old copies of traditional learning. All you can get now is Common Core. And so someone's got to do it. We are slowly starting to put together curriculum that is available for people that is pre-Common Core. Freedom Project Media, for young moms and dads, and if we look around the room, no offense here, we have an overrepresentation of grandmas and grandpas, don't we? 700 talks, 700 the same way. 60, 70, 80% of the audience is grandmas and grandpas. Almost very few moms and dads come. Here's the thing about that. The only way to reach the 30 and under mom is with media. So we've built a very thriving media endeavor to try to woo moms and dads to take a look at what we're doing. And finally, the partnership. Came up with the idea a couple years ago. We've got these great churches in this country, but they're empty Monday through Friday. Busy hubs of activity on Saturdays and Sunday, but Monday through Friday, you got these beautiful buildings, all these gorgeous rooms, and no one's using them. What if we could put our school electronically into those churches? Wouldn't cost the church, wouldn't have to hire teachers, wouldn't have to insure teachers, wouldn't have to do any of that stuff. What if we were able to allow churches, very inexpensively, moms and dads to drop their kids off at church 3 or 4 hours a day instead of the public schools, where they get a classical education, and all you need is maybe a youth minister or a couple of volunteer moms every week who just watch the kids, make sure they're staying on task, paying attention to the computers, paying attention to the lessons. And we've got some of the partnerships we already have. We've got 4 of them that I can think of right now, where after 2 hours of school each day, the pastor's giving the kids a 45-minute Bible study. We hear Make America Great Again. How about if we could take Christian ideals and real learning and put them back together? I mean, that's the recipe that built our greatness. And it was the moment we walked away from it that we started to fall. And I know you've probably heard the statistic too. If you look at the year, we look at all the demographics. You look at the year at which American educational achievement started to fall vis-a-vis the industrialized nations of the world, where up until that moment it was going up, and then it started to crash. 1962. And of course, it's not a coincidence. It's the year they took prayer out of public schools. Right? That's the year they banned prayer from public schools. So these are the 4 things that we do. Christian values are in all of our classes. We pray before our classes. It's interesting. We're starting to get more and more liberal atheist kids who take in our class. And the mom's point is that I don't believe it, and I don't want my kids believe it necessarily, but there's something in the values. The interesting fact, the biggest demographic over the last 2 years, the biggest demographic of new homeschool families over the last 2 years were progressive parents who just could not stand the dumbing down of their schools. It's really remarkable. So we do Christian values, classical curriculum. Our classes are live and interactive. No Common Core, no federal money. The minute you take a nickel, the minute you take a penny of federal or state money is the minute they've got you. State of Wisconsin keeps belly aching, like I'm sure it's going on here in Washington. The state keep belly aching, the public schools, how broke they are. Give us money, raise property taxes. But you know, for all their belly aching about being broke, every week, as the director of this school, I get a letter from the State of Wisconsin Department of Education offering me hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships or in meal money. Now, A, if they're so broke, where'd they get that money? And B, you know what this is about. The minute I take a penny from them is the minute they come and they say, oh, and by the way, since you're getting money from the state, you've got to change the curriculum, you've got to do this, you've got to take the standardized tests. That's what's happening. Be careful of voucher and charter schools. I love school choice, but any voucher or charter school that takes money from the state or the feds, and got news for you, they all do. Sooner or later, that string is pulled. 14 states have already tied voucher and charter money to state educational exams. That's how they get you. We've only been around 8 years. We've now got kids in all of those foreign countries. We have a thriving missionary program for American GIs in places like Ramstein, Germany, right? You got kids overseas, they want an American education. They certainly don't want a German education, right? And so these kids, 2 of our burgeoning areas are the military families overseas and missionary families. Families that are doing missionary work in South America or Africa. Their kids are getting an American education, logging onto our classrooms from the jungle somewhere 3 or 4 hours a day. But we've got a really broad and diverse, like Saudi Arabian kids, Chinese kids are taking some of our programming, which is great. Partnership, I mentioned to you the gist of partnering with churches. Just a short little, these are some of the churches that we've already got. We've got, I think, 16 different partnerships now. We've got them in Alabama, we've got them in Tennessee, we've got them in Michigan, we've got them in Wisconsin. We're starting to grow that pretty well. Here's a little video.
Have you ever noticed how many churches sit empty throughout the week? And how much impact is 1 hour of Sunday school really having on today's youth? And if our children are spending most of their week in public school with no godly influence, what kind of influence are they getting? Well, Freedom Project Academy wants to change that, and it's a simple concept. Partner with churches across the country to provide fully accredited, biblically based K-12 online classes that allow every church that sits empty Monday through Friday to start their own school. Here's how it works. Freedom Project Academy is a Christ-centered, government-free online school that streams live classes into homes, private schools, and churches throughout the week. This means the amount of in-house faculty once needed to operate a Christian school is reduced to a few key people. With FPA, all you need is one person to observe a room full of students as they attend online classes. FPA provides more than 100 live courses from core subjects such as English, math, history, and science to Latin, Spanish, French, and economics. Schools can select the classes they want to use while providing their own courses for Bible study, music, art, and anything else they choose. FPA also provides all assignments, tests, and grading. And it doesn't matter if you have 2 students or 200. The partnership and quality of service from Freedom Project Academy remains at the highest level. So here is the real question. How big is your God? Let's continue to impact as many lives as possible by providing a Christ-centered education for children around the world. Let's fill up our churches all week long. Because together, we can faithfully educate America.
So I can say, too, that our classes are Christian-centered but non-denominational. So, and we've been doing this for 8 years. We have never had a Lutheran mom call up and say, my kid's getting too much Catholicism, or a Catholic mom call up and say, hey, there's way too much Methodism in this class. It's just denominational free. So, for instance, in the English courses, which I designed, they're going to read Dante, great Catholic writer of the Middle Ages. They're going to read Milton, the great Protestant poet of the 17th century. They're going to read C.S. Lewis, the Anglican, and they're going to read Tolkien, the Catholic. Again and again, we're going to expose them to the great books of Western culture without necessarily arguing dogma. In fact, one of our mottos, and we tell it when moms and dads sign up with us, we tell them, now your job is to teach worldview, right? Our job is to teach subject matter. You teach worldview. You teach your theology. Right? You see what your kids do in our classes, and then if you feel the need, give them more, or put it. You want to put something in a more Lutheran. We've even got some Jewish students, right, who are taking our coursework, and then the Jewish moms and dads are balancing out what is basically a Christian program by giving Jewish instruction over and above it. So it is very versatile that way. And also, too, you don't have to take the entire curriculum. We can do that. If you want to take 5 courses a semester, 10 courses a year, do it. Fine, we'll do them all for you. But if you're a homeschool mom who just isn't quite sure she's going to be able to teach chemistry to her junior, we can do a chemistry course for you. Or if you like the way that your private school's teaching kids or your homeschool's teaching kids, but you want a little something extra in American history, one of the things I'm most proud about is our American history programs. In high school, kids take 3 full years of American history. And the first semester of every year is the history. They get a good overview of the colonial period in their freshman year. But then the second semester is civics. So they're reading all the founding documents. Our kids, as freshmen, read Bastiat's The Law. We're having them read de Tocqueville. We're having them read the actual founding documents. Because it's one thing to teach kids history. It's another thing to teach them the rights and, more importantly, the responsibilities of living in a republic, right, which our kids don't get. I don't have to tell you that 19 out of every 20 kids I teach at the university thinks we're a democracy, right? It's just, you're right. That's the place to start right there. So we can, and we are fully accredited, I should also say, which means your kids, if they come with us, they can get a high school diploma, and that high school diploma is fully accredited, and now we're getting kids into all sorts of colleges. We've got 4 kids at Hillsdale. I am tremendously proud of that. We have a kid last year, who just got a full ride to Baylor, so we are doing a really good job in terms of helping place these kids as well, too. And once you sign up for our program, that entitles you to free tutoring, too. So that if, in spite of all of this, there's problems, we will help tutor. We'll take extra time out and tutor your kids in the subjects. And we were talking, Chris and I were talking about this beforehand. It's not just the tutoring, too. Let's say your kid is struggling in math. Right? We're actually giving 4th graders 4th grade math, and they came to us in elementary school, and they're doing 2nd grade math in 4th grade. Well, we don't just abandon those kids. We can tutor them. We can get them caught up. But we have other things that we can do as well. And one of those things is, in terms of mathematics, when you come home from a hard day's work and your kid is struggling with some concept, but you weren't in the classroom, right? The teacher in a public school class goes through it a couple times and moves on. And your kid 8 hours later is trying to go do this and doesn't remember what was said or didn't understand it, nothing you can do about it. Well, in our classwork, that kid can call that lesson up 24 hours a day. Mom can sit down with him and play it again 5 times until she and he understands it, right? So again, school becomes something that can become part of life more broadly too. Technology has a lot of downside for our kids, but it's time we start using it for our advantages, right? And so the worldview here matters, and all that stuff matters. And then I mentioned the curriculum. We don't talk much about that, but we are working our way through math, starting with math. Age-appropriate, rigorous math curriculum that's designed to prepare kids, lo and behold, designed to prepare kids for college math and designed to scoot them right into STEM careers. We offer classes in the high school in advanced, not just biology, advanced biology. We offer classes for gifted kids in physics. Our physics course is actually taught by a former NASA rocket engineer. She's great. And so we have astronomy, physics, biology, and advanced biology for those kids who can be pushed ahead. And that's the other thing I should say to you, right? Is that if your kid comes to us as a 9th grader in high school, but he's only doing 7th grade math, but he reads like a senior in high school, guess what we can do? We put him in senior English, and we bump him down to 7th grade math until we can catch him up. Unlike the public schools, where everything has to be common, where kids aren't allowed to jump up anymore because that ruins the curve, if your kids are good at certain subjects, we immediately put them in the higher levels, right? And if they are struggling, we can put them back a little bit and work with tutoring to try to pull them forward. So the flexibility, the availability of all of this it's the technology that helps us. So we're working through our own, trying to write our own individual math curriculum. I mentioned the media. I should say too, we started this 8 years ago with 14 people. 14 people responsible. Right now we've got about 750 students in all 50 states and 14 different foreign countries. We're now down to 12 people. We are managing all the school. Think about what it would cost to run a 750 student school. You're talking 40 different employees at least. That's not counting the complete teacher overhaul. And so we're working through this. We're trying to work on the curriculum as well, and we've got this media program that is going really great guns. Our video work has won 5 national telly awards. We've got a guy, one of our 12 is an animator. And so we have been animating American history, classical, traditional American history. It's funny, last year alone, 600 public schools took our conservative history videos and showed them in their classrooms. So we actually got the progressive schools now, they like what we're doing. I want to show you an example of one of our Battles of America series. We did the Presidential Minute, a video minute on each of the 45 presidents, principles of the Constitution, the 56 Declaration signers, and we just finished Battles of America. 15 episodes devoted to each of the major wars in American history, starting with the Battles of America, the colonial period. Get a sense of what we did. We do all the video you see here, we did it exactly in-house.
Battles of America, Fort Washington. On October 28, 1776, British Commander William Howe engaged and defeated the Continental Army in the Battle of White Plains, New York. This defeat for the Americans came on the heels of their retreat from New York City. Following this success, General Howe sought to take out the last colonial stronghold in Manhattan, Fort Washington. Forts Washington and Lee were located directly across the river from each other and built to defend Hudson Bay from British warships. Fort Washington, strategically placed at the highest point in Manhattan, was considered to be impenetrable by American General Nathaniel Greene, who convinced George Washington to not abandon the fort with the impending threat of attack. When Commander Howe ordered the American troops to surrender or die, Colonel Robert McCall readily dismissed the threat, unaware that William Dumont, who had recently deserted to the British, provided them with the layout of the fort. On the morning of November 16, 1776, 8,000 British and Hessian soldiers descended on the fort. Using Dumont's traitorous information, Howe stormed the fort from the north, east, and south. Despite a valiant resistance, 3,000 patriots were no match for the British and their allies. One by one, the outer lines of defense were lost, causing the patriots to retreat into the safety of the fort. The massive overcrowding so hampered the defenses inside the fort that by mid-afternoon, Colonel McGraw formally surrendered. Instead of enforcing their original threat of surrender or die, the British took 2,800 prisoners and commandeered the fort's weapons, provisions, and ammunition. Just 3 days later, General Washington abandoned Fort Lee and retreated toward the Delaware River, which would become the site of his iconic crossing of the Delaware into the Battle of Trenton. The American loss of Forts Washington and Lee was among the worst defeats suffered by the Patriots during the Revolutionary War.
Now that we've finished this, we are currently working on a series called The Heroes of the West, where we take the figures of Western culture and we save them from the revisionists, right? We do 2 minutes on Columbus, which tells the whole story about Columbus, not the narrative that the kids are getting in the school. And so we're working through those as well. We've also been blessed to be really well endorsed by some important people. Our Governor Scott Walker was at our building with a big thumbs up, Senator Ron Johnson, but media figures, Pat Gray from the Blaze, Steve Deace, the Christian talk show host at Conservative Review, Crowder, Matt Walsh, others too. And so I thought I would sort of wind this up by showing you some of the people who have made use of our program.
You said something to me this weekend, and you said, what is the name of this place?
FreedomProject Academy is what it's called.
Is that the thing you endorsed?
Yeah.
Is your child's school not lining up with your family values? Is your child struggling with Common Core and federal testing? Consider our friends at Freedom Project Academy.
So we're going to send Noah through that this fall, and we're looking forward to it. When I first heard about these guys, actually they came to me when you guys were putting the Common Core movie together a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that issue was a hot burner issue, and the guy who was sort of the dean of the academy, Dr. Duke Pesta, was actually doing a lot of talks around the country, warning people about the perils of Common Core.
Yeah, I've looked into them, and they are wildly anti-Common Core, which I love.
It's classic education.
How tired are you of Common Core and education bureaucrats? If you're as tired as me, Dan Bongino, the renegade Republican, then you need to go to Freedom Project Academy.
The whole reason I talk about it on the show is because I believe in a true education. An education that is not only steeped in truth, but it also comes from Judeo-Christian values, not doctrine, values.
I mean, we've gotten away from biblical worldview, and I believe Freedom Project is doing that. It's trying to create a biblical worldview that these people can start working through as they become adults and start making decisions for their family, how they live life, morality. Because we don't have that. Unfortunately, I don't know that the public school is just not teaching those things anymore.
They put into practice what we talk about in the movie Indoctrination, where we're talking about the problems of the public school system. Well, we provide an alternative, and an amazing alternative.
When you think of all the egregious things that are happening in government schools, when you think of the denial and the lying that's going on, the political correctness, the intimidation by the unions of public school teachers, the reinforcement of the lies that's brought through your college professors, etc. Freedom Project Education cuts through that. It goes to the root. It goes through the historical context. It illuminates the wonderful world of the founders, and it's not shy to talk about the Judeo-Christian worldview or the classical worldview that really is the foundation of this nation.
The American spirit is alive. It is alive. And we breathe new life into it through education, through projects like this.
They're utilizing the tools of the future while giving an education that is rooted in tradition and timeless moral values. So it's the best of both worlds. It's the best of every world, really. And best of all, no government involved.
And now you can do that, and you can do it with the best teachers, the best methods, and the best classes in the world. And I don't think there's any place better than that right now than Freedom Project Academy.
My van spends probably 200 days a year on the road, and I didn't want to leave my little girl at home, so we searched and searched for a way that she could do school and still be with me. And then we found FPA, and for us, it's absolutely perfect.
You're just not going to find it in other places. And so conservative Bible teaching, apologetic application, I don't see anybody else who's doing it out there what y'all are doing. So I would encourage everybody to consider it. If you're a young person and you're involved in the Freedom Project Academy, thank your parents. They did a fantastic job of finding this resource. and putting you in a situation where you're getting probably the best education you could possibly get at this stage of life.
That last fellow was Tim Schmidt. He is the president of Delta Defense and the United States Concealed Carry Association. His kid was being terribly bullied. His kid was a bit of a math savant, his sophomore in high school. He was so good in math that, as a matter of fact, he was a little awkward, and he was being tremendously bullied in the school. Tim pulled him out and put him in our school. He's the kid who got the 4-year ride to Baylor. Just took him right. So it's a lot of good people, and giving testimonials is great. But I think more important than all of that is we actually have with us today, and we're about out of time, but we have a FPA parent with us. So do you mind, Chris, talking a little bit about your experience?
Well, I could take another hour just to listen to everything that was on there and going, man, as a parent, I am so grateful. I didn't even know most of the stuff that he said about the stats about what's been going on in our public school system, but I have 2 children in FPA right now. I'm a father of 4. My 2 oldest daughters actually went through the regular public school system and the online K-12 system that's free, that's out there available for you as well. We saw what was going on culturally in our school system, so we pulled our kids out of that and put them in online school because at least at home we had some kind of control over who they were hanging out with and thought we were getting control over what they were being taught. Well, being involved in FPA for the last couple of years, I'm telling you right now, it is a 180-degree shift. I'd be willing to sit and answer some questions to anybody who wants to ask me some specifics on that. I've interviewed Dr. Duke on my radio station. I work for KYMS 89.9 FM, and we've had him on numerous times over the last couple of years talking about this. One of the questions I remember asking you was, how can you teach in a college with all of this going on, understanding all this the way you do?
I do this because college is the way it is.
Yeah.
That's my salvation is this stuff here.
So I really think that it's, given the short amount of time that I have to speak, I can't answer really specific questions, but I will say this. We struggle with finances in my family. We're a 1-car family with 2 home businesses, and we don't make a lot of money, to be perfectly honest with you. It is worth it to me to spend the money to put my kids through this school because the long-term benefits. I'm willing to not make another car payment and walk to work if I have to afford to be able to make the payments for this school. It's not overly expensive. It is more than free, obviously. But for me, it's worth finding a way to afford to get my kids through this school.
Thank you, Chris.
And I believe that my kids are going to be better off. I'm glad that one guy said that. Thank your parents for that. I know my kids will when they're older. My son wants to strangle me sometimes because it is not easy.
They'll put you in a better nursing home one day because you gave them a good education.
There it is.
And as far as my final comments, and thanks, Chris, my final comments is, in terms of cost, for an entire year of 10 classes, $2,300. Comes down to about 98 cents a school day. Right? So, and the reason we keep the cost that low for all the grading and all the teaching, about $2,300, that's if you take 10 classes, because we really do consider ourselves missionary work. We, all the money that we bring in, almost all of it, like 95% of the money that comes in tuition goes directly to the teachers. That's how they live, right? And so we are, like the John Birch Society, we're a 501c3, so we need to grow. If you're looking for places, tax-deductible donations, please consider us. If you want to be involved with what we're doing or want more information on church partnerships, we've got some information for you there. Keep us in mind when it comes time to think about charitable donating. And the final thing I'll say to you is that this is not the only answer. It's one answer. It won't work for everybody. I mean, it's not going to work for everybody, but there are a lot of people for whom it will work. And at the very least, I hope you leave here today recognizing that it's not only is it much easier when there are more aids to giving your kids a good education outside the government schools, but it's also morally imperative now. I will say, I always close my talks by saying this. From a biblical perspective and from a common sense perspective, if we are not the primary educators of our kids, we're going to lose them. I mean, doesn't mean you have to teach them everything. Doesn't mean that you have to hold their hand all the time. But if we're not overseeing and involved with, and if you even keep your kids in the public schools, are you spending an hour at least a night just asking them what they learned? Show me what you learned today. If you're not at least doing that, right, then you're going to lose those kids. Thank you very much. And I know John, we'll have some questions, but John has something else.